Featuring prominent industry vendors, moderated by an independent analyst, Solutions Review presents the Expert Roundtable, an in-depth panel discussion focused on solving strategic enterprise challenges.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to this Expert Roundtable on ways to future-proof your workflow orchestration and automate migration to Airflow. Today we have assembled a panel of key enterprise players in the area of advanced data engineering, from Amazon Web Services and Impetus. Among other things, they will discuss the choice between maintaining expensive, outdated solutions that slow cloud and AI advancements, or modernizing with cloud-native open-source tools like Apache Airflow. To drive this conversation, we have invited veteran data expert William McKnight, who has advised many of the world's best-known organizations on their use of data and technology. He is a prolific author and a popular keynote speaker and trainer. William leads the McKnight Consulting Group, which provides clients with action plans, architecture strategies, complete programs, and vendor-neutral tool selection. William, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Doug, and it's great to be here. We are right here sitting in the sweet spot of something that is going on in all enterprises. We're all moving to the cloud in some way or another, yet many of us still have legacy data warehouses, legacy data integration, data orchestration, and so on that we have to deal with. And so in order to do that, a lot of us have moved the data, but maybe not necessarily all of the data orchestration. That brings us to today, because my guests have an idea for you, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We have Barry from Impetus, and we have Yev from AWS. So Barry, why don't you introduce yourself before we get into the questions?
Yeah, thanks, William. Hi, this is Barry Tuthill. I lead customer success here at Impetus and work with a lot of our customers doing migration programs.
And Yev?
I'm a go-to-market specialist for AWS Cloud and MWAA, and I have been with AWS for the last 3 years, helping customers with their journey to cloud.
Okay, well, guys, thank you very much. I presumed at the beginning that we're moving things to the cloud. We certainly are, but it may be worth stepping back and making sure that we're grounded in some of the reasons why we're doing that. So, Yev, let me stay with you. Why should enterprises consider migrating from legacy orchestration?
Yeah, great question, William. Yeah. So as customers make their cloud journey, right, they adopt AWS native services, they adopt third-party services. They still stay in some shape or form on-prem, and some enterprises decide to go multi-cloud. But then they kind of come to this cross path of like, we have so many of these disparate solutions, and how do we stitch them all together, right? How do we stitch all these services together? And Airflow is quickly becoming that stitch where customers can use one service that can orchestrate on-premise jobs, cloud jobs, as well as multi-cloud jobs. You know, Apache Airflow stands out for its flexibility, scalability, and extensibility. And Airflow enables dynamic custom workflows using Python, which is a language that's very familiar to our technical community. It integrates with all the modern data systems and supports all the complex dependencies. Additionally, to its cloud-native capabilities, we started offering service on AWS, which is called MWAA, which stands for Managed Workflows for Apache Airflow. With that service, on top of what you get out of the regular open source Airflow, you also reduce the infrastructure management, operational cost, and making it future-proof solution for enterprises.
Okay. Well, Airflow and MWAA are going to be very important to our roundtable today. Barry, same question to you from your perspective in the field. Why move to the cloud?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to two simple things we see a lot is customers want lower cost and they want better performance, right? But the challenge often becomes is how do I address the migration? That's the core concern, given the size of the environments and investments they have in these legacy technologies.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you already talked a little bit about Airflow, but there's a lot of orchestration tools out there that our audience can choose from. So, you want to say a little bit more about Airflow and why they should consider Airflow?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I mean, there are definitely a lot of solutions out there. I mean, I know when we speak with customers, a lot of times they get a little confused because there's a lot to choose from, right? But what we started to see is that currently Airflow is rapidly evolving, right? And one of the reasons is because of their active open source community. What a lot of folks do not realize is Airflow's community is actually larger than Spark's community, right? Spark is one of our sort of like data integration, data processing engines, but the Airflow's community is made up of 3,300 people. Now that's very important because that community drives the innovation and improvements, right? And some of the key trends include enhanced support for cloud-native environments, better integration with machine learning, and a bunch of data engineering tools, and with improved, of course, scalability for the cloud. And a managed solution like MWAA has gained traction, because it's using an open source Airflow, and it's making it more accessible, where we're reducing the burden of managing the infrastructure, right, for enterprises to help them modernize their workflows. I think one key that I keep telling customers is that as you get into cloud and you managing all this, you want to use MWAA or Airflow as your sort of like a single pane of glass, right? Because you want to make it's really hard to track all of the jobs that ran successfully or which ones that failed, and having that single pane of glass to orchestrate and manage all those jobs is important. Now, what Barry mentioned is important in terms of the cost performance, right? So as some of the legacy orchestration tools have been increasing in cost, and that's what we're hearing from customers, many are turning to MWAA as a way to keep those costs low, or ways to optimize costs, because we do see MWAA better when it comes to cost performance versus legacy orchestration services.
I see. Now, Barry, you guys have partnered with AWS. You're obviously getting well behind this Airflow and MWAA, and you've worked with many orchestration tools. Is that kind of your perspective as well about the competitive advantages of Airflow?
Yeah, absolutely. This resonates with everything that we're talking to customers about in the field. I think another key area that we see is talent acquisition. So as companies move away from the proprietary technologies on premise and move more toward open source and cloud native, it opens up organizations to be able to find talent easier. Even right out of college, open source is available, it's accessible to colleges. So, you can get that skill set, the young skill set, hungry skill set coming right out of college, versus having to hire somebody and train them on, this older, outdated technology. And we've seen this before in the past. We've seen this with mainframes. We've seen this with analytic technologies like SaaS, right?
Right. Well, these revolutions just keep coming at us. So it's definitely wise to keep an eye on your staffing needs as you tool up your environment. Now, what workloads should go to Airflow? All workloads, real-time workloads? How about workloads that don't have orchestration today? Maybe they're just simple cron jobs. Should we be considering those for Airflow? And should we be considering workloads that are on other orchestration tools to move to Airflow in this process? Barry, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So, you can pick there's all sorts of opportunities to leverage, different types of jobs in orchestration for Airflow. I mean, I think one of the core things that we see, especially in the migration space, is that they want to do is understand that the concepts that exist in the legacy world can map to the new modern cloud technologies like MWAA. So, for example, you'll find legacy technologies like AutoSys out there in the market, and in AutoSys, customers might be using things like box jobs, right? And those could be used extensively throughout the organization. So the question is, how does that map to Airflow and MWAA? Well, the answer is you need to move those to task groups, or also called the DAGs, right? In Control M, you have a very common technology called, or concept called jobs, right? Those also need to be converted and mapped to task groups or DAGs. In Control M, a different type of legacy orchestration tool, you have the concept of calendars. Well, those things need to be mapped to timetables in the Airflow world. So it's critical that customers understand how these mappings exist and how that's going to impact the migration. And what we've seen across numerous migrations and POCs, that there is a logical pathway to take all of these different concepts that exist in the legacy world and map them to Airflow and MWAA.
Okay, so it's good to know that there is a mapping process for the legacy to MWAA, and we're going to talk about the process. Be really interested to hear more about that from you, Barry. Have you guys built an MWAA for all of these workloads?
We, I'm definitely not part of the product team, but I will be very bullish to say yes, we did. And one of the reasons that where we see this is when we talk to many customers who have been using, let's say, AutoSys or Control M or SSIS or other solutions out there, right? The first question that usually they try to get to is, are all the concepts in the tools that we currently use, can it be mapped out? And I think one thing that we have seen is that when it comes to orchestration or scheduling jobs, right, for customers' ecosystem, when it comes to on-prem and the cloud, all those can be done by MWA, right? So because MWA, it orchestrates all the jobs, it orchestrates the workflows using DAGs, right? And that's what Barry was mentioning. And those DAGs are written with Python, a language that folks know and it's been around. You provide MWA an S3 bucket, right, where your DAG plugins and Python reside, and then you run and monitor your DAGs from the AWS Management Console, and you get a lot of the bells and whistles like SDK, user interface, etc., that helps users to basically become more operational and gain efficiencies than just using regular open source Airflow. So we definitely see Airflow on its own as an open source be able to support a lot of those complex workflows from the past, but also as the customers migrate to Airflow, there's much more that they can do on Airflow that they were able to do in their within their legacy environments and solutions.
Okay, so you got from simple to more complex workloads, and MWAA makes it all more simple.
That's correct.
Simple for that process. Okay, so we've been talking about this. Before we get into the steps involved in MWAA and the benefits financially, you want to say just a little bit more about it? You've said MWA, I'm saying MWAA, so start by clearing maybe that up, and tell us a little bit more about MWAA.
So I think this service is maybe 2 or 3 years old. One thing that we are proud of is we basically keep in the 100% of open source, and we will stick to 100% of open source. So like MWA does not make any changes to an open source code, right? But as part of the MWA, you get a lot of things which make it simpler, like automatic upgrades, right, to new versions. Amazon takes the heavy lift of provisioning of capacity. Like customers don't have to manage their capacity. They don't have to deal with maintenance, patching, and all these other things they have to deal with in data centers, or if they have to provision the environment and run the open source version of Airflow. We also take care of auto scaling, version control, and we always try to keep our cost, very competitive, so customers do see the value of the managed version of Airflow and they adopt it. That's basically those are main things that customers really like, and we're gonna continue improving on it.
Well, those customers have really got to like the return on investment and the lower TCO that you bring with MWA. Now, Barry, you have to break out the numbers with your clients to get them into this program. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What kind of financial benefits should we be expecting from MWA?
Yeah, well, there's the obvious reductions in license costs that they see, the elimination of the ongoing maintenance fees. But I think more importantly is looking at the administrative and infrastructure management costs that exist with maintaining these platforms. And that's all the hard dollar costs. But let's not forget why customers actually want to do this. It's because they want to pursue this initiative to become cloud native, to enable these higher value use cases that exist in analytics related to machine learning, artificial intelligence, and what we're all talking about these days around Gen AI.
So when I think of cloud native, Barry, I think about Kubernetes and microservices and really fully getting the benefits of the cloud. Is that what you're talking about in terms of cloud native benefits?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the most critical strategic directions we would recommend customers to take. It's going toward microservices, leveraging containers and Kubernetes. Key part of the strategy.
Okay, great. Well, let's say that you have a customer, they've seen the financial benefits, they've got a lot of jobs to move. So can you tell us a little bit about the process of getting to that end state, Barry?
Absolutely. So we've been working with AWS for many years across many large customers, in oftentimes helping them, facilitate this migration to cloud native, right? And through that time, and for the past decade, we've been building an IP called Leap Logic. It's a tool to help accelerate and de-risk this migration over to AWS native services. It's not just migrating; it's also transforming, right? We want to make sure that as we execute the migration, we're able to leverage the best in breed capabilities that exist in AWS. So it's not just lift and shifting the what we had on premise to the cloud. It's really transforming and optimizing everything that's been done before to work in an optimal manner in the cloud. And we use again our IP Leap Logic, which I think we'll talk a little bit more during the discussion today about.
We will. And I'm glad to hear that you're not just lifting and shifting the problems from legacy into the cloud. But what if you have a client that says, no, I got to get it done real fast, just lock and load what we've got, and then we'll deal with it later. Of course, maybe they will, maybe they won't. So do you deal with those kinds of situations with your clients?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the common discussion topics with customers. It's, hey, do I have enough time and budget to do a total re-engineering exercise, right? And get rid of all of the stuff that we've built and kind of build new in the cloud? Or do I take more of a lift and shift approach, which you get the speed of migration and you can start leveraging the cloud capabilities, but you have the challenge of bringing over a lot of the complexities and things that weren't done right from the past. You start bringing that stuff over, right? What we really do is promote a middle ground between those two, right? Which is, and we leverage leap logic in our methodology to do that, which is let's identify what can and should be moved over. Let's identify the complexity and technical debt, leave that stuff behind, and let's automate and optimize what should be migrated over through our engine leap logic, and then determine what might need to be rebuilt, re-engineered from the ground up in the cloud, right? So it's a balancing act between those two approaches. It's not one or the other, but you get the best of both worlds by taking a more integrated and balanced approach.
And yeah, I assume at AWS, you like this. You want to see these workloads really take advantage of your services at AWS.
No, that's correct. I mean, we see a couple of different patterns of customers sort of like coming to cloud. There in AWS we have we have our managed MWAA team, which is managed version of Apache Airflow, but we also have a team that support our ISV team that basically oversees the astronomers version of open source Airflow that's led by Beth Bickett. So what I see in some cases, customers, if they want to kind of tip their toes and just try Airflow, in some cases they don't go right away for the managed version of Apache Airflow, but they would just start with the open source Airflow, and they would start working with this. But what happens is, as they start to scale, it becomes very difficult for them to manage the infrastructure, to manage the version control, because you're starting to give access to much more users within your within the customer's ecosystem. It becomes much more labor intensive for customer, and that's where we see customers basically switch to the managed version of Airflow, right? To for all the points that I described earlier, right? Just to make it easier for them, and with all the auto scaling capabilities and provisioning capabilities, like there's a lot of things they don't have to worry about as they continue scaling.
Yeah, that sounds like the path that I've seen a lot of as well. So Barry, let's talk about Leap Logic and how that helps get these customers over to MWA.
Sure, I think we see common challenges. First, let me talk about the challenges we see. I think there's both technical and organizational challenges that exist across all of these migrations, orchestration including, right? Mm-hmm. You've got the technical challenges of 15 to 20 years of development happening in these tools. You have hundreds of thousands to millions of jobs running in a production capacity in these large organizations that may need to be migrated. You've got technical debt. So you complex jobs. You've got jobs out there that aren't even being used, but they're being maintained, right? And they oftentimes don't know what to move. There's all sorts of complexities that exist around the dependencies across the other technology within the ecosystem, because the orchestration tool is calling on and integrating with various other components of a data ecosystem, right? So those are a lot of the technical challenges. And then from an organizational perspective, you need to think about change management. Your customers are very concerned about the time, the cost, and the effort of migration. And then finally, the adoption of a new technology, something that a lot of their users, employees are not used to. So, how do we address those challenges? Well, we use Leap Logic, and as I mentioned, it's a tool, but it's also a methodology, and we go through a 4-step process using Leap Logic. The first step is an assessment, right? The assessment is is leveraging the tool to really dig deep into the landscape, understand where the technical debt exists, understand where the dependencies exist, understand, all of the complexity so the customer could really truly understand what is the scope of this migration going to look like. Because one of the important things is customers often don't understand what is the scope, what is the level of effort going to be. So we can take a very data-driven approach to answering that question for the customer. Once we do that, then we move to the next phases of a migration. And the second step is we call transformation. And that's where we use machine learning capabilities built within Leap Logic that automates the transformation of all of the patterns that exist in the legacy orchestration world to the optimal patterns in the MWAA world. We mentioned some of those things before, right? Calendars to timelines, these box jobs to DAGs, right? All of that is done through automation within Leap Logic. Now, you can never get 100% automation. Anybody who says you can't get 100% automation, be very concerned about that. But we can get a lot of automation. We can get 80 to 90% automation. So that significantly reduces the human intervention, the amount of manual work that needs to happen in the migration.
You mean automation doing the migration?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And that conversion of the patterns of the legacy orchestration tool to the optimal patterns. That's
pretty
on MWAA.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. 89% is pretty good.
Yeah. So that leaves 10 to 20% of the work that still needs to be done manually, but we're showing that acceleration and automation. Now, finally, the next step is validation and then productionization. So how do we do testing? How do we make sure everything is running the way we expect it to? How do we onboard users and get them up and running? And that's more of the method, the end-to-end methodology that we deliver for our customers.
Sounds very comprehensive. Now, you've seen Barry bring these clients over to you. Does it seem to play out like that from your perspective?
Yes. So I'll give you two perspectives, right? So first, let me give you a customer's perspective. So I've dealt with a couple of large customers, and a lot of times when they reach out to me, where they potentially looking to migrate from legacy orchestration service, I've seen anything from like 100,000 jobs to multi-million jobs, right? So if you're a customer and you have, let's say, 500,000 jobs, you without knowledge that these kind of tools exist on the market, their thought is everything has to be done manually and it's going to take us 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
And because of that thought, a lot of these customers do not prioritize these migrations. They let's be honest, they just get scared that it's just gonna take a long time, and 3 to 5 years in large financial organization is an eternity, and the break-even point, if you deal with like a business case, can be somewhere around like 6 to 7 years. So in many cases, they either can't sell it to their management, or they just get a little too hesitant of pulling the trigger of migrating. And in many of these occasions, when I deal with some of these large financial institutions, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of jobs, when I mention that something like this Impetus Leap Logic is out there and can potentially automatically convert 80 to 90% of their jobs to Airflow, I can tell you there's a lot of excitement usually when I bring this up. I mean, one example I had pretty recently, I was dealing with a large financial institution, and when I brought up that there's this tool that can get it done, the response I got was very interesting because I never heard it in my 15-year career. They said, we'll clear out our calendar in 2 days, pick a time slot, and we want Impetus to come in and do the demo. This is something I haven't heard doing this kind of work in 15 years. So that shows me that there's a lot of interest, and it's a very refreshing information that customers want to hear, and because it makes their life simpler. It makes their life simpler in selling the vision, migrating to a better product, and going to cloud native. And all those are win for customer. And that's what this partnership was about, is giving those wins to customer, making the acceleration happen.
Yeah, I can tell you, I was excited to hear about this program in the preparation for this this roundtable. And also, let's face it, the migration may not be the most exciting thing that people want to do inside the organization. So let's get it done. Let's get it done right. Barry, let me come back to you about Leap Logic. Something you said triggered a question in my mind, which is, you mentioned briefly about organizational change, the organizational change that this brings. New technology, new way of doing things, perhaps more automated orchestration, and so on. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you deal with that organizational change? Maybe put some of the viewers at ease about, oh yeah, they're going to take care of that too, because that's really important.
Absolutely. One of the most critical parts of any migration is making sure you've got your end users up and running and understanding the technology, and that's part of our methodology, right? There's no way to automate that, unfortunately, right? But it's all part of the process of how do you approach doing the end-to-end migration, and we start getting we do all the core heavy lifting, the conversion work, but we start bringing the end users involved when we start getting into testing, right? So they can start validating that data is matching. They start doing user acceptance testing, so they see that they're getting the performance, right? They see performance, they see the data matching, and they start getting engaged with the migration towards the end, right? But that's when we start doing all of the knowledge sharing and handover. So we document everything, we do the knowledge sharing and handover to them. So when Impetus is done and Leap Logic is done, the customer's up and running, they're ready to go, they're in production, and we've solved that organizational change problem for them as part of the process.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're taking care of that. Now, in my mind, if a process involves machine learning and artificial intelligence in the right ways, it has more scalability to it. It's going to be around a lot longer, and it's going to be all the things we're talking about here today. Now, so Barry, you want to tell us a little bit about the involvement of machine learning and AI in this process?
Sure. So, machine learning has been a part of the core engine of Leap Logic for many years, right? It's a pattern-based engine that has learned over time. So any customer that uses Leap Logic gets the advantages of this engine being trained across every other customer. And at this point, we're well over 1 billion lines of code that have run through the system, right? So we use machine learning to improve our accuracy and conversion capability within the tool, right? And that also helps with what the customer gets as an output, through the automation and the consistency of what we're delivering as an output through our engine. It becomes more manageable and consistent for the customer as an output that they need to work with and manage in the future, right? So, and we're going to continue to develop this. We see big opportunities, for Gen AI with the creation of documentation, for example, and speeding up that process. So I think we're still, on the machine learning side, we've been doing a lot there. On the artificial intelligence side, there's just huge opportunities for the future.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that I want to add to what Barry has mentioned. So I think on a previous question when you mentioned about organizational changes and how So there are a couple of things that we do from AWS standpoint. One of the ways we're trying to break the barriers, right? We are offering immersion days where we basically can bring in our SAs and kind of upskill the folks on the customer side, in Airflow. We also support them from a specialist SA. We have some specialist SA, they are subject matter experts in our technology that basically help them as they starting to test the Airflow, start to test the MWA on what are the best practices. We provide them some workshops to kind of like and deliver some use case based and do some use case based training, etc. So we have a lot of those things already ready to go, which customers can use. Now, in terms of the machine learning and Gen AI, I think that's one topic that has been coming up, and I think this is where on MWA side we actually did a lot of innovations. We actually so a lot of folks probably know we came out with a service called Bedrock, Amazon Bedrock, where you can run your Gen AI. Now, as customers are starting to pick up on Bedrock, they start to think, well, how do we orchestrate it, right? So one thing that we have done, we came out with Amazon Bedrock operators, right, for Airflow. Now, what you can do is you basically can invoke, using Airflow, you can invoke Amazon Bedrock models. You can fine tune those existing models. You can provision throughput for existing models, and we provide support for RAG and knowledge bases. So that is already comes out of the box. So there's not a lot of stuff you need to actually code or develop. You can just turn it on and start using it alongside with Bedrock. So those are some of the ways we are helping customers with their Gen AI adoption.
I see. So you mean that they're not just migrating their orchestration, but they're also leveling up their machine learning capabilities when they do this?
That's correct. I mean, and I think that's one thing that really important. When you adopt the native services of AWS, you're not just adopting one siloed service. You adopting the ecosystem of services. They are highly integrated. So whenever we have one service that's coming out with some functionality like Gen AI, all the other services would come up with integrations and capabilities to work alongside those. So this is the value prop of using the whole AWS native ecosystem.
Well, and AWS certainly has a wide variety of means to get us up and running in machine learning these days. So that's great to know. So Barry, this has all been great learning about this process. Would you tell us some of your customer stories doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a global airline customer that has migrated their complete Control M orchestration architecture. This is the actually largest airline in the world, over to AWS and MWAA. We have a large a global market index organization that is currently doing migrations. This is a current project. They have more than 5,000 AutoSys jobs. We've already migrated 4 or 5 of their lines of business, and they're starting to see those advantages of MWAA, where they're seeing the scalability, the elasticity, that single pane of glass that Yev had mentioned, and all the advantages, cost advantages of moving to MWAA. So we have numerous case studies, number of ongoing projects that are moving very successfully, a number that have completed already. We'd be happy for anybody interested in following this broadcast to share additional information on how we can help their unique situation.
Well, great. Now, Barry, you mentioned AutoSys. Is that a particular hotbed of activity for you, migration from AutoSys?
It is. It is. So AutoSys is a very common technology in the orchestration world, on-premise. Typical scenario that I think we've all seen who've been in the technology landscape for a while. They were acquired by a bigger company, and that caused a number of changes in licensing models, maintenance models, which has really kind of caused concerns within their customer base, due to the excess cost. So this has really been a huge area where we're seeing active engagement in the orchestration world.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of AutoSys out there, and this sounds like a great next step for those AutoSys customers out there. Now, Barry shared a customer story or two. Do you have any that you want to share about MWA? Maybe impetus customers, maybe not.
Yeah, so let me take maybe a little step back and give so in 2022, I have launched something that's called ETL modernization program for AWS that basically has been helping customers, modernize their workloads pertaining to ETL from legacy to AWS Glue. Now, I started working with Impetus during that time, and we used the same process and same tool, Link Logic, to basically gain a lot of traction on ETL side. So what happened is earlier this year, I started getting a lot of requests, particularly to AutoSys migration to Airflow, and at first, I did not know where it was coming from, but then I realized there are some compelling events which is driving customers towards migration. Now, at that time, I reached out to Barry and Impetus, inquiring if there's potential automation that we can achieve, right? And when I found out that they already had these automation in their tool, what I've done is I actually inserted this MWA migrations as part of that program that I already had, so customers can get the same benefits of free assessment, free proof of concept, and that program qualifies for MAP funding, which is stands for Migration Acceleration Program. That's basically is available for many for customers migrating to AWS. So basically, alongside with ETL, we started shifting towards MWA migration, and we've seen a number of customers. Now, I wish I had like one particular vertical in mind where I can zero in, but I can tell you it's across the board. I have customers from manufacturing verticals, from auto verticals, from financial services, where they have huge presence in some of these tools, like AutoSys, like Control-M, where they exploring migration or already going through migration with Impetus. Now, some of them who are not as large footprints, like let's say if they don't have thousands of jobs, if they only have a couple of hundred, some of them they choose not to go with Impetus and they convert them manually. But when it comes to a couple of hundred jobs, it makes sense, right? But when they have thousands of jobs, I highly recommend for customers to use Impetus's Leap Logic for those conversion benefits.
So some customers might consider if there may be some MAP funding available for this program as well. And back in 2022, when you started the ETL organizational program for AWS, did it include this at that time, Airflow at that time?
No, it did not. So originally, ETL modernization program only included the ETL migrations, right? And we actually included that as part of this year, like somewhere around February, March, because we saw an influx of these orchestration requests. Now, if we think about the journey to cloud from customers, maybe in some case it's not just a compelling event, but also the evolution of the journey. Because if you think about like how, as customers started adopting cloud, in the beginning, they were looking at what are their biggest spenders, like databases. They wanted to move databases to cloud. They wanted to move their data warehouses to cloud. They want to move their Hadoop infrastructures to cloud. So last 2-3 years, I was very busy with ETL migrations to cloud. And I feel like orchestration is like a natural journey where now customers are like, okay, we took care of our databases, Hadoops, data warehouses, ETLs. What else do we have running on-prem that we can potentially modernize to cloud native, right? And AutoSys Control M started to get flagged, and customers asking us if Airflow is the tool, or MWAA is the service that can potentially help with those modernization efforts.
Okay. It's always fascinating to hear about the journey of these processes and these tools. And it was great to hear you, Barry, earlier say that you guys were still evolving Leap Logic. It's not perfect today. You're still evolving it. I'm always skeptical when somebody says, well, we're done, we're final, it's over, it's perfect, because these things never are. You keep evolving them.
Absolutely. I always say every customer has some uniqueness to their environment, right? So we're always going to be identifying new patterns, certain types of customizations that might exist in a customer environment that are substantial, right? There's a lot of them where we can proactively identify those things, adapt Leap Logic on the fly, and then have the customer get the benefit of that automation as part of the process. So as we're doing it, Leap Logic is never stagnant. It's always adapting and evolving as we're doing every migration with any customer.
Okay, great. So now, Barry, our viewers they're visualizing themselves in this journey with you. And we've talked about there's ROI, there's great efficiencies, there's machine learning, and all of that. What are some of the key challenges that they should be aware of, and how do you address them in this process?
Yeah, I think the challenges are very common. It starts with, what we talked about, before, with is getting a true understanding of what does the environment look like, and we talked a lot about assessment, right, and understanding the interconnections and dependencies that exist, before you get into a migration. Right. And this is one of the things that we do with customers is we invest in this assessment for customers. Right. They know they want to migrate, but they're not quite sure what the level of effort is going to be. So we'll go in there, use Leap Logic and go ahead and solve that problem for them and say, hey, this is what you have. This is how you should approach a migration. We talk about the challenges of the concern of a manual migration, right? And being able to solve that through automation, right? So we'll come in and do proof of concepts for customers to show them, hey, this, not only can you do the migration and it'll work in MWAA, but you can also automate it and it'll drive acceleration. On the testing side, this is, a big challenge that, we work very closely with customers because, when you start getting into productionizing, right, you need to first get into testing. And what does that mean? You need access to lower level systems. You need access to test data, right? And an organization needs to be ready to be able to have these things available, right? You'd be surprised how many times that when we get to the testing, I didn't realize you needed that, and things kind of slow down a little bit. But we can always get through that. But organizational readiness is one of the key challenges that we try to get in front of up front, as we talk about our methodology, as we get into the assessment, to make sure that they know what needs to happen at every step of the way.
Yeah, and just to add to what Barry has said, when I deal with a lot of these organizations, like especially like a lot of times they're trying to solve if it's a go no go without doing assessment or proof of concept. And I think figuring out go or no go with migration based on just hypothetical understanding on how things play out is very challenging. Yes. So what I always my guidance to customers are always like, why don't you go with this free assessment and proof of concept that we offer here, because this is no risk for you folks, right? And then once you know the outcomes of assessment, once you took some of these sample jobs and you converted them to Airflow and you sort of like compared and contrasted on what was your runtime on legacy solution versus how it runs on MWA or Airflow, then you can make an educated decision on how you want to move forward. And in many cases, like that, for me, this is the key, right? To guide them and help them get to this point, so they don't make the decision based on hypotheticals, but more of an educated approach, and then they really know what they're getting themselves into, how long it will take, because that's what one of the keys out of this assessment. They will know how long it will take for the whole migration. They will know how much will it cost them, and they will know how much the TCO of MWA is, right? Based on all those points, they will know if they have the budget. They will know if they're willing to go with this journey. And we're here to support them.
Well, those are the big questions, and I'm glad they're taken care of in this process. So it's not a jump into the dark. It's jump into the light. It's something that all of these enterprises need to do. They're all on the path. Maybe some have started, but you can even jump into the middle of that process with MWA. So as we close out here, and Barry, I think there may be something you want to share with us. You can bring that up now. If there's anything that didn't come out here in terms of key takeaways, let's just bring them out now. I'll start with Yev while Barry gets the slide ready. Yev, any key takeaways?
Yeah, so key takeaways, we want, definitely we want more customers, if they are using legacy orchestration services, definitely take a look at MWA as your next generation of orchestration. We have a vast amount of information, immersion days, workshops that can be either delivered to customers or they can be done self-paced. We have also options in terms of like MAP, which will help alleviate some of the migration costs for customers if they do decide to migrate. And please reach out to your account teams. Inquire about MWA, and as you basically think about this, we have one big event coming up, which a lot of folks know about, which is reInvent. So at reInvent, we will be coming out with a lot of new announcements. There might be some around MWA, but if you are planning to go to reInvent, I will be there. Barry will be there. And I don't want to speak for Barry, but they usually have a booth and they do a really good job helping customers understand with some of these migrations. So yeah, please reach out to me, reach out to Barry, and hopefully I get to see you guys at the reInvent.
Sounds like a good time to learn more about this program. Barry, to you, key takeaways?
Yeah, I think that the time is now. I think most organizations have already started their journey to the cloud, have gotten pretty far along, right? If you have orchestration tools still running on premise, right? Don't wait. We can get you to the cloud faster. We can enable you to take advantage of these more advanced ML and AI capabilities. As Yev had mentioned, yes, we will be at reInvent. We'll have a big booth there. If you'd like to meet with us directly, we have outside of the booth, we have a meeting room as well. We have a big party going on as well. I mean, there's always a good time when we go to reInvent and out in Las Vegas. So we've got a happy hour event at the Prohibition Bar. And we'll happy to have anybody who's interested in learning more about Impetus and AWS come join us there for some fun. But besides that, yes, reach out to you can go to leaplogic.io or impetus.com, contact us, and you can connect to our technical and pre-sales teams. We'd be happy to have a discussion around your specific migration use case, or reach out to your AWS account manager to get us involved in any sort of discussions you'd like.
And my key takeaway is this all sounds like a very, very relevant program, a very solid program. You're taking care of the migration, the machine learning. You're very focused on the ROI, the testing, and the organizational change. So I'm really excited for you. And good luck to everybody out there on your migration journey. I'm going to pass it back to Doug.
Well, thanks, William. That was a great discussion. We appreciate the time. Again, we want to thank William McKnight for moderating that panel and our two expert guests from Impetus and AWS. And we appreciate your attendance as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.
If your business would like to be featured in a future event, contact us today.